You're going for what?
Hey yo, we're going for woke.
Because the system is broken and no, it's not a joke.
We're not here to brainwash or be choosing a side.
We're just two Asian guys here to open your eyes. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Going for Woke podcast. My name is Calvin Chen,
My name is Aaron Pion.
and we are two Asian guys here to open your eyes. What's up, y'all? This is episode 0 of our podcast, and this is really exciting. This is something that Aaron and I have been working on for a little while. Basically, we created this podcast because there's a lot of things going on in our society right now today that are serious, right? And it has a huge impact on how people like you and I live our daily lives. Things like healthcare or emotional trauma, the education system, racism,
Yeah.
so the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
It's hard to be informed about these issues and rational about it at the same time because they're emotional and they're personal to us, or they're very removed from us and we don't really know too much at all. But systemically, it's complex,
Yeah.
right?
And part of the problem is like the way the media outlets present some of these issues, they present it in kind of oversimplified sound bites instead of
Yeah.
appreciating the complexity that it deserves. You got media outlets trying to like kind of bat for a team. You know what I mean? Like you got team
Yeah.
liberal, team conservative, and their job is to go to bat for their team and keep their fan base happy. And
Yeah.
that's just like really poisoned our dialogue, and it's kind of like dumbed us down as well. I mean,
It leaves a lot of room for tribalism and misinformation and I'm gonna say conspiracy theories even. I mean, like there's like YouTube channels out there that are
yeah.
dedicated to,
Yeah.
right? Like these conspiracy theories are basically part of their sales funnel in a way.
Yeah.
And I just think that, on one hand, I believe in freedom. On the other hand, I also believe in information. I believe in dialogue. I believe in, right, trying to emerge from all of this as a country united and on the same page.
Yeah, and kind of what we want to do with going for woke is do the opposite of what's been going on in the media outlets. So we want to like just kind of take a step back, appreciate the complexity behind certain issues. But more importantly, we want to present the story in a way that creates empathy for people who may disagree with us, just because these things are really complex. There really are like it's not just two sides to an issue. There are like multiple angles to every issue. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. And since there's multiple angles to this issue, it's hard to be informed. It's hard to be rational about these things. But then being uninformed about these things, kind of not being on the same page as the rest of everyone else in a way, it really prevents us from being citizens and from being united as a people, from having a common story.
yeah,
And I think, it's 2020 right now. There's so many things going on where I think both on the right and the left, if you want to look at that sort of a dichotomy, I think people on both sides, just that at least the common folk, we both realize, okay, but we really need to have unity.
yeah,
Okay, we really need to be on the same page. Like, are we really just gonna watch this country tear itself apart with this polarism
hmm
or yeah,
polarization.
you know, polarism, same thing.
Either way, it's a pole in it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Aaron, why don't we tell people about who you are? Like, who are you to have this podcast and share these things with people? Like, why you?
So for my I guess for my 9 to 5 for my living, I'm a finance manager for a bread company. So basically, my job is to analyze and validate the numbers, kind of like investigate, poke holes, ask questions. But another key part of my job, it's also my job to like paint a story with the numbers and the data. So I kind of simplify all of that into like graphs and charts and like bullet points and PowerPoint slides and such. So that's me. Like collect data, analyze it, validate it, and tell the story. That's what I do for a living. But on the other hand, like I've also been like very, very passionate about politics since a young age. And especially, like you said, this is 2020 when we're launching this podcast, and there's just a lot of crazy stuff going on. So
Yeah.
for me, like this Going for Woke podcast, it combines what I do for a living along with my personal passion. And yeah, in this particular case, you and I will decide which political issues we want to tackle. And I'll kind of do the same thing. I'll research, look at the numbers, collect and validate the data because there's a lot of like questionable, like you said, conspiracy sources out there, right? So you
Yeah.
need to validate the data and then ultimately like paint paint a story or paint a common story that all of Americans have to share as a society, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And I'm just gonna tell on myself right now. For I think the majority of these episodes, when you start to hear a lot of details and facts and figures, that's my man Aaron right here doing his thing. So I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about me. I grew up like super math and science, like typical Asian American or Chinese American story. You know what I mean? I graduated from UC San Diego with a degree actually in bioinformatics.
Yeah.
So it's super Asian to do something like that. And so, but yeah, after college, I just kind of like had this crazy idea that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I kind of left all that behind. Fell flat on my face, realized that I sucked with people, and then uh, because I was never really trained to be good with people, like where would I have gotten that from? So I was like, all right, well, I'll go into sales. And so, one thing led to another. I started cold calling for a man named Tony Robbins. Y'all know
mm,
Tony Robbins,
Tony
Mr.
Robbins.
Life Coach
Oh yeah.
Extraordinaire, right? So I worked for Tony for about 7.5 years. When I left the company, I had been coaching at the company for about 6.5 years, somewhere around there, coaching and sales. And so what I do nowadays is I have my own executive and life coaching practice. So what I get to do is I work with people to take a look at how they're thinking about things and understand what their biases are and how their biases limit themselves and limit the potential of their teams or other people, and kind of gets in the way of them being on the same page and able to execute on something well,
Mm,
right? So
word.
where I'm coming from in this conversation is, number one, I've always kind of looked at the American sort of political landscape and just thought, man, this stuff is so weird. How can people act like their own desires and wishes are greater than the needs of like the whole or humanity? Like I just never really understood that, and it's always something that I kind of just found weird and peculiar. But I just kind of thought, oh, well, I don't know the whole story. I'll just kind of like leave well enough alone.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this at the same time at our society, and I just think, why do our businesses, right, get the best coaching and the best practices on how to create unity and leadership? And it seems like for the American political discourse, we just kind of leave that up to media companies and leave that up to like people's opinions and stuff. And so
Yeah.
I really don't have any intention of creating sheeple, or that everyone needs to like think the same thing. But here's a story that I tell a lot, right? And I think it speaks to leadership. It comes from my own sort of Asian heritage for kind of understanding the nature of reality in the world. But I think it really kind of sets the tone for what we're trying to do here with going for woke, right? And so, Aaron, I've told you this story before. It's the you probably see this coming. It's the story of the blind man and the elephant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I keep going back to that story.
Oh, for
So
sure.
for all of our listeners right now, if you've never heard the story, or if you have, I'm going to tell you kind of with my own remix at the end. Okay, so the way it was told to me was that in the kingdom of India, long ago, the king or the emperor was hanging out with some blind men, and out of nowhere, he motions over to his guards to say, "Bring the elephant in here." Now there's an elephant in the room, okay? And the blind men are kind of like, "Whoa, what's going on? We feel this sort of presence. We don't know what it is. Feels kind of awkward. There's an elephant in the room." King says, "Tell me what an elephant is." And so the blind men are like, "That's weird. All right." So they start reaching out with their hands because they can't see with their eyes. one man makes contact and he like grabs hold of the tail and he says, "Your Highness, I think an elephant is like a rope."
Hmm.
You know, next blind man up to speak says, "I think he's lying to you, Your Highness, because actually I think an elephant is a lot more like a wall." He's got his
Hmm.
hands on the wide expanse of the pachyderm,
Yeah.
right on the side of the elephant.
Yeah.
The next guy, he's got his arms around the leg. He's like, "Actually, I think the elephant's really more like a tree trunk.
Yeah.
They're either lying to you or they're dumb." Right? The guy that's like holding the elephant tusk, he's like, "Actually, it's a spear. I think these guys are committing treason. They're lying to you." And
Yeah.
just goes on and on, right? Like
Yeah.
these blind men start arguing about what an elephant is.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of like when I was a kid, that's the story that I was told. And I mean, what does that reflect back to us about these complex issues? What is America, right? Gun rights. What should be done about healthcare?
Right.
There's all these
Education.
people,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just
They're
multiple
all
angles. Multiple
there's
angles.
multiple angles. We're all
Yeah.
experiencing different parts of the elephant right
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
And the thing is, if we don't realize that all of us are kind of blinded by our own perspective and kind of blinded by our lack of perspective on the rest of the parts of the elephant,
Yeah.
that really leads to a lot of trouble because, if we can't agree on what an elephant is, if we can't agree on what the problems are, if we can't agree that a certain subset of America experiences massive pain or experiences no pain on a certain issue, if we can't just understand that, it's hard to agree on what to do about it from there. And
Yeah.
what I want to do is to say, hey, there's got to be like one blind man. This is what I'm hoping for, right? This is my remix right here, Aaron. Is that there's got to be one blind man that's like, wait, hold on. No one's dumb enough to get it 100% wrong. No
Mm.
one's smart enough to get it 100% right. That's a quote by Ken Wilber,
Yeah.
right? So let me make my way over to the next blind man and say, hey, I swear I felt like a spear,
Right.
but you said wall. So show me wall. Like, can you show me what you see to say wall? Holy, holy crap! Like that is kind of like wall. Come over here. Isn't that like a spear? And then
Yeah.
just kind of Marco Polo your way all the way around this elephant,
Yeah.
right? And see what you can build together as far as what is the elephant and validate, right?
Yeah.
Is it really a wall? Is it something else? Well, it's kind of like a wall. It's kind of flat. It's kind of wide. Okay, cool. But
Yeah.
at some point we can put this together. But it's going to take being willing to expand beyond our own perspectives
Yeah.
in order to do that. And just like I do that with people in leadership situations or
Hmm.
sales situations, right? In my coaching practice, this is what I want to do for us as a society, or kind of like hold that space so that we can have those conversations.
Yeah, and I think for the going back to the blind men and the elephant, like for them to say like, "Oh, that guy doesn't agree with me, therefore he's lying to you or committing treason." I think that comes from a certain mindset where like you're so certain of what you're experiencing in front of you, you just like can't make space for anyone else. So I think to be that blind man who, does the Marco Polo and goes around, it just takes a level of respect, humility, like just a willingness to constantly be learning as opposed to thinking like, oh, I'm woke. I've experienced this part of the elephant, so we're done. And this is
Yeah.
how it is, and that's it.
And the challenge is, I might see something that you don't see.
Right.
But then if I feel like then that makes me better than you because I see something that you don't see, but then I don't see something what you see that I don't see.
Hmm.
And that's just
Yeah.
that's the problem right there.
Yeah. That
You know
is.
what I mean?
That is
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as for like, you guys might be wondering how Calvin and I became friends to begin with. So the first time I met Calvin, it was like 10 years ago, and I actually didn't meet him in person. I heard his voice rapping on a track that I had rapped on. And that's because one of our mutual friends, Jeff, shout out to Jeff, by the way, he made the intro beat to this podcast. But anyways, our friend Jeff, he dropped a beat. I rapped a verse on it, and then Calvin dropped a sick verse on it. So I feel like instantly there was like this Asian male rapper solidarity between the two of us before we even met in person. Yeah. So I think the first time we met, it was at Jeff's house, working on music. He was dropping beats, and then I think that's the first time we introduced ourselves to each other, and then I'm like, oh, what do you do for a living? You're just like, yeah, I'm a life coach. I work for Tony Robbins. I help people. I help make people's lives better, and and so like I find that part of my job super fulfilling and whatnot. And that's kind of like, yeah, that really kind of stuck out to me, you know. So that got me interested in Tony Robbins. Purchased a set of CDs, stuff, and yeah.
Hey, what was it about that? What sparked your curiosity or interest in that moment? Like I never got that part of the
Yeah,
story.
because you're just like, oh, like, yeah, I help people's lives, like I help improve people's lives, and I really love my job. And I don't think you really hear that a lot from people. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm. Yeah.
you kind of go to your job like for a paycheck, and like, including myself, right? And it's kind of like, oh, this is what
Yeah.
I do, and then that's it. Like usually it's a one sentence answer. This is what I do. No one really like excitedly
Mm.
expands on it, like, oh, I'm changing the world for the better. And I was like, I like that energy. You know what I
Right
mean?
on.
So yeah, yeah. So that was pretty awesome. So yeah, I got the Tony Robbins CDs, and kind of like, I don't know. I think that's kind of how we started bonding over stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, reflecting back to it, my time working for Tony Robbins was a very eye-opening time
Mm.
for me, right? Like I really got to see how much whatever's going on out there in the world, that like I had let that stuff affect me, and I kind of like modified the way that I approached things, or I kind of like shortened my stride
Hmm.
on some things, or I kind of just said, all right, well, I guess that's just how it is, and this is just who I am then. And fundamentally, like, when I was working for Tony Robbins, it's funny, like I was 22 or 23 when I started coaching people through Tony Robbins. And I think uh, that took a leap of faith for the manager to hire me to do that. But like I was doing that and I was helping people. It's kind of easy to see what people aren't seeing,
Hmm.
kind of like with that elephant in the blind man story. So it was very fulfilling for me to help people in that way. But then it was interesting, like seeing how people didn't recognize a lot of their own limitations that they put on themselves helped me to see the limitations that I was putting on myself unwittingly.
Hmm.
And like we've had a lot of conversations, Aaron, where I think that was a lot of realizations that you had along the way also.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Sure.
and I would say that without that sort of connection through Tony Robbins coaching, this whole sort of like self expansion, self improvement
Hmm.
sort of journey, that our relationship probably wouldn't be as deep, meaningful, or fulfilling, because there's conversations there that I think are very personal, but also at the same time very transformative
Oh,
and powerful. That frankly, I wish I could have this conversation with everyone.
yeah, for sure. Like I appreciate, like, we've kind of like helped each other along that self-development path. Like, you got me into Landmark, for example, like kind of recommended different books. And I do think about, like, yeah, some of the quotes like you've shared with me, that Ken Wilber one that you shared earlier. No one's smart enough to be 100% right all the time. No one's dumb enough to be wrong 100%. Like, yeah, those things kind of like it definitely sticks with me, and it shapes your mindset. um but yeah, and so we've checked out the self-development journey together, but I think more recently, in like the last 6 months or so, like we got super into the Yang Gang. And for those of you who may not know exactly what that means, there was a presidential candidate in 2020 named Andrew Yang. And it's hard to like do his candidacy justice in just a sentence or two, but basically he talked about the impending automation that's gonna eliminate millions and millions of jobs for Americans, and pretty much like rewrite the rules of our society. And one of his flagship proposals was to, give $1,000 a month to everybody. That's universal basic income. That'll kind of soften the blow that comes from automation. But anyways, he you know you and I, we were both like super invested in his candidacy. Now, I remember you hosted that Yang Curious party where we were trying to like brainwash these undecided voters into who Andrew Yang is
I
and his
was,
policies.
I was expanding their awareness, dog.
All right, all right. He was expanding their he wasn't brainwashing. It was just expanding their awareness. I like it.
I
But
mean,
yeah, so there was that.
look, I mean, so brainwashing kind of implies that I'm trying to like influence you like against your own will or something. You know what I mean?
It sounds
And
more nefarious.
and look, I mean, like the reason why we really connected with with Andrew Yang. I mean, at first I was like, oh, there's an Asian man running for president, and you know what's funny was like
Hmm.
my first response was, I'm not gonna vote for him just because he's Asian. You know, like I actually
Yeah,
kind of like held him at
exactly.
arm's distance, at arm's length. But then
Yeah.
like as time kind of went, I was like, yeah, I shouldn't be like a self-hating Asian person or something. I should at least check this out and give this guy a fair shot. Like after a while, I realized I was kind of being unfair to him, and it
Yeah.
really opened my eyes. Just like the way that he, you know, spoke in terms of numbers and the data. Like it just, guys, like I'm not trying to be stereotypical about him being Asian. He just spoke to the numbers, but he just facts upon facts upon facts upon facts. And the thing is, facts are are usually inarguable, but you can tell when
Hmm.
statistics and facts are being cherry picked, or when statistics and facts are being kind of presented in a way that's, you know, like meant to be spinny. But you know, fundamentally, what I really appreciated about Andrew Yang also was that he stuck to the facts as much as possible, but at the same time you can tell that he was trying to be fair about the scenarios
Hmm.
and the situations. He didn't come into the politics. He wasn't on the pulpit and at his rallies demonizing anybody really
Yeah.
from whatever side of the political spectrum. In fact, right,
Yeah.
he ran as a Democrat, but then he had a very strong base of people that were like libertarians, people on the right,
Hmm.
ex-Trump supporters, and he was just, I wouldn't say he's like the prototype as is like I saw him and like I want to become Andrew Yang one day, but then it just kind of like fit into this mold that like I had really been, I guess, fashioning for myself, where it's like, look, there's got to be some way to be truthful about what's going on, kind of like expand the awareness about what's going on and have that be unifying,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And like like one of his main slogans is humanity first, which is that's the hat I'm rocking right now. But yeah, humanity first, it kind of it basically boils down what you were saying. It's just basically a sense of empathy, for our fellow Americans. He focused on the Americans who would lose their jobs due to automation. And so for him that was humanity first, but that kind of like spilled over into other areas. And like for example, like so I spent a week out in Iowa canvassing for Andrew Yang, and of the 12 volunteers, half of us came from families that either voted for Trump or like yeah, we're planning to vote for Trump again in 2020.
If Andrew Yang
And the
doesn't
reason
win.
I if Andrew Yang doesn't win. And the reason is and that represents his base. It's what you were saying earlier. Like over 40% of his supporters were people that were like non-Democrats, and they were coming into the party just to vote for Andrew Yang. And I think what that really opened my eyes to kind of what you were saying. Like there is room for this, like there is room for a unifying figure or a unifying message, something that's genuinely in the service of everyone. And so it kind of like especially in such a poisonous realm like politics where it just seems so partisan and one side versus the other.
Mm.
um but yeah, somehow he was able to create this space where people genuinely were able to come together and do that. And I think that was like really inspiring to both of us,
Yeah.
and that's why we were so invested in his candidacy. And even though like he's not a presidential candidate anymore, um it's like I feel like it kind of started a movement or sparked a thought process.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah,
And this
so
is
that's
kind of
kind of
I
amazing.
would say that this podcast, what we want to do right here, has been kind of not propelled, but like that kind of like gave us the impetus and the push to say, hey, like we want to like we're creative people, right? And like and we care about these things. and we want to contribute to that sort of holding the middle, so that we can like
Mm.
examine like what's the data, what are the facts, and try to like hold the middle so that we can try to piece this elephant together. I mean, what's really
Yeah.
interesting is that going through the personal development world, going through the world of talking about systemic challenges that are complex, and politics and all that, it seems like there's two different
Mm-hmm.
camps that are kind of like
Yeah.
diametrically opposed to each other. I'm not saying that. I think it's also kind of a false dichotomy, but at the same time, I think it kind of seems like it's there. It's like there's a part of that that's also real, right? There's
Yeah.
if we want to, if we just want to paint it, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
the social justice sort of camp, right? They call these
Mm-hmm.
people the social justice warriors. They're on the left. They're out there talking about injustice. They're out there talking about inequality. They're out there talking about lack of resources for specific communities that are marginalized, right? And it seems like it
Mm-hmm.
seems like these people have a bone to pick with a lot of shit, you know. And then there's the other side, right? These people are more, if you want to call their philosophy, the bootstraps people. Pick yourself up
Mm-hmm.
by your own bootstraps. I hear that complaining. I hear that your life is not ideal or whatever. Well, you know what? Do
Mm-hmm.
something about it. Tap into your inner power. And it's really interesting how like we've kind of like seen both sides of that, like from the political side, but also the personal development side. That sort of thinking seems to enable people to say, you know what, social justice, whatever, it's all about like the inner development. And then on the social justice side, it's all, no, it's all about the structural change,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And we're sitting here kind of like, no
It's
one's dumb
both.
enough to get it 100% wrong. No one's smart enough to
Mm-hmm.
get it 100% right. What if it was
Yeah.
both? Like when I think back to
Yeah.
like the first thing that connected us together, Aaron, which is hip hop, right? And hip hop's a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting thing, I think, because on one hand, right, hip hop came from the ghetto in the Bronx, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
got people like Public Enemy, you got people like Rascas, you got some people talking about like just the harsh realities and the systemic challenges of what's happening to these marginalized communities, and it's real. But at the same
Yeah.
time, when you're in that sort of an environment, you know that you got to tap into like your own, that you got to tap into your own resourcefulness. You know that you got to
Right.
do whatever it is that you got to do. You know that you got to get your mind straight and stuff. And there's also a strand of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a strand of that in hip hop too, which is
Yeah.
that
That's
sort of
true.
like pull myself up. I got to do for myself or whatever. You know?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of that because yeah, rappers really talk about like hustling, working their way out of the ghetto, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
Grinding,
Mhm.
like all that. Like so and they're like, just being entrepreneurial and to work your way out of that, like the ten crack commandments,
Haha.
the
Yeah.
Biggie. Yeah. Yeah, so it's yeah, it's pretty awesome you pointed that out. And yeah, I think we genuinely believe it is really both things. There is room for both schools of thought. We genuinely believe both schools of thought are valid. And that's how we want to, kind of move forward with going for woke. And that's the reason also we decided to name our podcast, Going for Woke, because we realize it's something that we're going for. It's a never-ending journey. We're never going to be fully woke. So, the best we can do is keep trying, keep leaning into that direction.
Yeah.
But it's a journey that we want to go on and invite everyone to go with us on. And if I want to boil it down to like two things, right? We want going for woke to create empathy and to create empowerment.
Yeah.
And that empathy, it kind of talks about the social justice side we talked about earlier. We want the pull yourself up by the bootstraps people to have empathy towards, you know, the broken systemic things that are affecting people, preventing people from reaching their full potential. At the same time, we want the social justice warrior, kind of left wing folks to also have empathy towards people who are more into that inner game, like tap into your personal power thing, because we think it really is both things.
Yeah,
You know,
I
the
think that it's like you can call it like personal responsibility and also social responsibility.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, personal responsibility does not absolve us as a collective or as a society from enacting measures that would create more equality, or personal responsibility does not absolve us as a society from doing things that kind of that make things better for people overall. Like, if we're all Americans, let's treat each other like we're all fucking Americans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then on the other
Sure.
side, though, like, the fact that there is a sort of social responsibility that's needed over a certain situation, people need to still be able to. Uh, it's still on you in the end as an individual to take your own personal responsibility for your challenges also. So it's that
Yeah.
that interesting sort of dichotomy at work right here, and we want to be able to
Yeah.
empower both.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna, I mean, Calvin and I we're biased human beings, unfortunately. So we're gonna try our best to be honest about our biases. But we're also gonna, try our best not to go bat for a team, like we talked earlier. And we're just gonna try to tackle as many issues as we can, from this angle. Just kind of take it apart step by step and do the analysis and just talk about things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope you guys stay tuned. Just keep joining us on our journey. Subscribe to our podcast.
Yeah.
Whatever platform you use,
Yeah.
and yeah, we want to we want to hear your guys' thoughts.
Absolutely. Like,
So
we're planning to talk about healthcare. We want to talk about the education system. We want to talk about race. And again, it's with the spirit of expanding awareness, because awareness is unifying. And I just really want to establish right here that, guys, we're not experts. We got a data person in Aaron. He's gonna dig up a lot of data. We got me right here. I don't even know what I do right here. I have an opinion and I care. and and
you
and I ask
inspire.
hard
Hey, you
questions.
open people's minds.
Okay, fine, I do that. So I mean,
Yeah.
but we're not like experts at this stuff. You know what I mean? In the end, we're just two curious Asian guys that are going for woke. You know, we want to hear your thoughts along the way, and if you have anything to contribute or questions that you want to ask, maybe you'll open our eyes, but maybe we'll open yours also. So
So
until next time, everybody, thank you for tuning into this first episode. Let's keep on going for woke.
that's right.
I'll see you soon.
Peace.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. If you like getting woke with us, then subscribe now and give us a 5-star rating. And if at any point you thought, I wish more people heard this, you can spread the word by sharing this podcast with them. We appreciate it. Until then, keep your eyes, your ears, and your hearts open, everybody. We're out for now.